Denise here. So I want to share something with you today. A few weeks ago, I got to sit down and have lunch with a friend who I grew up with in China. And we talked about TCKs, third culture kids. Those are kids who've really spent a lot of their developmental years in different countries, different than their passport nation. And I've just been meditating on how colorful, how diverse all of our stories are, TCK or not. And the mess they are, but also the beauty that they are. So I'm going to share my story with you. And I hope you see your story in it. I'm going to share it with you in a form that is significant to me, which is art. So wherever I've been in life, through trauma, through beauty, the one thing that has been a consistent factor in my life, my grounding place, my security, is God. And I'm so grateful for His presence. Even my birth was pretty miraculous. That it's not the time for that story, but my parents went through 10 years of infertility and prayed significantly, and my twin brother and I were born, and I praise God for His presence in that. So He's just going to be this constant stream through everything else. When I was 2 months old, right after we had been born, we get on a plane and we head to Indonesia, where my parents had been serving. When I think of Indonesia, I don't have a lot of memories. We were there until I was 5. But I think of green. I think of lush. I think of the guava tree that we had in our front yard and the mangoes. I think of the camp where my dad worked, the camp my dad set up, and zip lines and Patmin climbing up a coconut tree and cutting coconuts off for us to drink the water from fresh. It was a beautiful time. I loved it. It was such a significant time for me. I remember the heartache of leaving Indonesia at 5 years old. I didn't want to leave. It was my home. But it was a season. And at 5 years old, we got on a plane and we moved to Colorado for 1 year. My family had been invited to go to China and work in China, which again is a whole other story of miracles and God at work, and I'd love to share it with you guys sometime. But this is about the transitions. And so to honor that transition, my parents felt called to China. And so we packed up, and before getting to China, we went and did a furlough in Colorado. And if you've been to Colorado, this might be a silly association, but the thing everybody comments on here is how blue the sky is. And that is true. There are these wide open, gorgeously blue skies in Colorado. So, I forgot to, let's just keep drizzling God all through this. Okay, so we get to Colorado and I spend my kindergarten year in Colorado. I was scared, but I had my brother with me, so that was good. And I had a wonderful kindergarten teacher. Okay, so 6 years old, we're following where my parents are being led by God. And we head to China. Truth be told, my first color that I associate it with is gray or black, because we lived in these gray brick apartment buildings and it was a coal mining province, so there was just this black dust everywhere. I still have trouble wearing white clothes because I still just feel like, oh no, I'm going to get soot all over them, even though I'm living in Colorado, years later. But the other color I think of with China is red. Yes, it's the country color. It is the national color of China. China was a place of loss, hardship, and passion for me. China was where I spent my really developmental adolescent years. It's where I started getting to know myself. It was, I think it will always be a heart place for me. It was a significant place of me learning my own heart, my heart hurting, of my heart rejoicing. So interspersed with life in China were trips back to Colorado. When I was in 3rd grade, my dad broke his neck and we came back for 6 months. And then again, we were back in China for 4 years. Well, a few years. Spent another year in 5th grade, back in China for a really significant period of time. And then SARS hit, and my senior year of high school hit, and we came back to Colorado for 2 years of high school. That was a very hard time for me. All through this, though, especially the years in China, I learned to pray. I spent years lonely. I spent years rejoicing, and a lot of years with God, and a lot of years leaning on Him and His comfort through all the transitions. I still remember when we first moved to China, I missed Indonesia so much. I had dreams of Indonesia. I remember counting the years as a 6-7-year-old, hoping that my years in China wouldn't outnumber my years in Indonesia, because it felt disloyal to be in China longer. But over time and through a lot of prayer, I really started to love China. I started to feel myself there. I started to work more with the ministry and help out with the tour, with visitors, and I felt confident. I felt confident. And then we moved back to Colorado when I was 16. And what 16-year-old feels confident? Definitely, almost none of us, but especially not one who has just moved from a foreign country. I remember struggling with anger at having to leave China, and I remember just being fearful because it had been years since I'd lived in America. I didn't know how to do anything, and I felt like an idiot, really. Like, not everybody realized what subtle things are different between cultures. And I'm not sharing this for pity, I'm sharing this for understanding. I know there's many who've been through this. Crossing the street was different here than in China, and I'd found my stride in China. I knew how to function. And all of a sudden at 16, I'm angry at leaving my country, and I'm here where everybody says, oh, welcome home, and I knew nothing. I didn't know how to function. And I'm mixed in with all these teenagers, high school students who terrify me. I was just terrified. And it took time, and really in this area, I started raging at God a bit. And He met me in the raging. He met me in my anger, and He was gracious and He was loving. And I really credit that time in my life with a lot of the blessing of my faith today. Because somehow I didn't want to rage at anybody else, so I let myself rage at God, and honestly, that was one of the best things I could do. And then I started receiving comfort from Him. I was really missing China, so the second I graduated from high school, I jumped on a plane and went right back there for a year. And that was so healing. And then God guided me in colleges, and I was led very specifically to come back to Colorado for college. And there, oh man, I found what would be my long-term faith family. I dated and got heartbroken. I found best friends. And I later married one of those best friends, my husband, Adam. Discovered my passion for massage therapy. In Colorado, Adam and I dealt with infertility. We dealt with trying to adopt and not going through, changes of careers, ministry. And over the years, I started to love Colorado and be so grateful for the place that God has placed me, the place I'm still at today, and we'll see what God has for the future. This is my life so far. I look at these colors and this mesh of things. It's a bit of a mess, right? I don't know how they go together. Sometimes I feel like I've lived 3 or 4 completely different lives, like different movies. They don't all belong in the same movie. You know, they don't all feel like they're part of the same life. This is the image God's given me. My life might feel disjointed. It might feel like there've been different lives. It might feel like a mess. But God has been in every piece of it. And they all go together. My years in Indonesia, my years in China, and my years now in Colorado, they blend. They were meant to be a part of my life. They've impacted my life. They've colored my life. And while sometimes it feels like this jumble of emotions and I miss every single one of the countries that I've lived in, I'm so grateful for each and every experience. I'm so grateful that God guided my parents the way He guided them, that God has guided me in my adult life the way He's guided me, that I have had the experiences that I've had, even though there was trauma, there was heartache. I did not like leaving any of those places. There were years of grieving involved in each loss, in each leaving. But I would not change this picture. Look at that. We might feel disconnected. We might feel like a mess. Our lives might seem confusing and blurred. But your life is a beautiful tapestry. It's a beautiful painting. The pieces are meant to go together. The pain, the sorrow, the joy, they all collide and impact each other. They're all a part of who you are. Don't try to leave a color out of that cup. Don't try to forget a portion of your life. It's who you are. And I can only imagine if we could see this from God's perspective, the painting that He's putting together. And I hope one day God will give us that view, that God will give us that insight into what He did in our lives and that tapestry that He built for us. I praise God for my life. I praise God for my struggles. I praise God for my blessings. I praise God for Indonesia and China and America, Colorado. And I praise God that He was with me through every piece of it. What would your canvas look like? If you make one, I'd love to see it. God bless.